I was raised in the Catholic Church, and I was very involved. I was like on the diocesan youth council, and president of the youth group, and led music, at the church services, and it was part of my identity. And people knew there were certain days of the week that if you wanted to find me, you could find me at church. And I had, I guess started going to college, and I was sort of seeing this girl. It was nothing serious. We'd seen each other a few times, but there's a few weeks where I was like sort of seeing this girl. She went to a different university, and she showed up at church one day, pretty distraught, a little scattered, probably on like Adderall or something, something. She was a little out of it, and but she was there, and she wanted to see me, and sat through the whole mass. And at the end of mass, I was done playing music and packing up and all that, and she came over and I said hi, and we talked, and she was upset about something, and she like needed somebody to talk to about it. And she left. We spoke, and she left, and I was chastised for allowing her in the church, for creating a circumstance where a girl like her would barge into church. She didn't barge in, but that's how it was presented. She would barge into church, and she was on something, and it was distracting, and like her clothes were distracting, and she doesn't belong here. And it was really, I think there were other seeds, but it was like probably the strongest seed that was planted for me in regards to me leaving the church, which I eventually left the Catholic Church, and I'm a Protestant now, but I do InstaChurch now. I don't like, I don't really have much of a home, but the inhospitable nature of members of the church, I couldn't understand it. And they asked me to tell her not to come back. And it wasn't serious enough for me to even say that, because we didn't end up spending much time together, but it seemed to me that if a girl is distraught, and maybe she does have some kind of, maybe it's an addiction, maybe it's a full-blown drug addiction, and maybe she's promiscuous, and maybe she has, issues where she seeks attention from men. Where do you want her to go? Where would you want her to go? If she's not welcome at church, where should she go? Hospitality was and is the hallmark of the Christian faith. It's difficult for us to feel like that's true today in a world of right-wing culture wars.
I'm to the place right now, if you vote Democrat, I don't even want you around this church. You can get out. You can get out, you demon. You can get out, you baby butchering election thief. You cannot be a Christian and vote Democrat in this nation. I don't care how mad that makes you. You get pissed off as you want to. You cannot be a Christian and vote Democrat in this nation. They are God-denying demons that butcher babies and hate this nation.
The church has used its collective bargaining power to elect rather divisive people who are willing to go into the lives of other individuals and sort of create little microcosms of genocide. I'm going to invade your land, and I'm going to cherry pick which parts of you can stay and which parts of you must go, and I'll eliminate the parts of you that I don't like. That kind of culture war is devastating. But what is the opposite of hospitality? It's genocide. Hospitality would be welcoming a stranger into a home, and a genocide is going into somebody else's home and eliminating them permanently. So for a church to elect somebody who says, I know kids listen to this, earmuffs, I like to grab them by the pussy. For us now to be in a place where it didn't make sense to me that ultimately it was the church, white evangelical Christians, that elected that person. You'd think, well, how could they excuse that? But we realize now it's not that they were excusing it. That's exactly what they want to do. Now we are literally reaching into the vaginas of strangers and saying, I'm going to plug it up, and you're going to have this baby against your will if you must. That's exactly who they wanted to elect. Somebody who is willing to do and say that. Rather karmic. So bizarre, eerie almost, that this is the conversation that we're having now, these abortion debates. And the rest of the conversations that are about a lack of hospitality. I mean, Tucker Carlson, a favorite of the Christian evangelical right, over 400 times has stoked fear and insecurity in the minds of white Americans that minorities are here to take over and strip away your power and make your vote not count, or whatever he's saying, to the point where people really believe it. And we just witnessed the worst racial massacre since 1923. That's the reality that we're living in, and so much of that is being born within the church who used to be known for hospitality. Christine Pohl writes in this book, her book Making Room, writing from the first 5 centuries demonstrates the importance of hospitality in defining the church as a universal community, in denying the significance of the status, boundaries, and distinctions of the larger society, in recognizing the value of every person, and in providing practical care for the poor, stranger, and sick. That was the hallmark of the early church, the life of Christ. I mean, the very image of Christ, this beaten, bloodied, battered corpse hanging on a tree. We like to picture the golden cross hanging from the neck. You know, the "what would Jesus do" bracelet. No, his life was really a rather grotesque image, the way it culminated. And it said, "For this hour is what I came for." That's the real work he came for, is to become that beaten, battered, bloody, disgusting corpse hanging from a tree. That evidence of pure sacrificial love, no greater love has anyone than this, to lay down their life for a friend. And who's the friend he's talking about? Us sinners. The Gentiles he called dogs. That's us, Christians. We are dogs. And yet, he laid down his life for us friends. That's the kind of hospitality that he calls us to. In Luke 24, the resurrected Christ is walking on the road to Emmaus with some of his disciples, and they don't recognize him. And they're like, "What? Like, are you the only person who hasn't heard about what's going on?" He asked them what they're talking about. And he says, "Oh, listen to what the prophets wrote. Listen to what scripture said. These things had to happen. Did they not? Are you guys fools? Like, have you guys not been paying attention?" They didn't recognize him until they invited him in, and he broke bread. He showed hospitality around that table. He broke the bread, and their eyes were open. It was in that act of hospitality that they recognized Christ. It's in the act of hospitality that Christ comes alive in us. So where are we showing hospitality? Is it only in the most extreme situations where we find the poorest, the sickest, those on their deathbed, those with extreme mental illness or extreme poverty, sleeping on streets? We fill the pantries at a soup kitchen. We make contributions to the Make-A-Wish Foundation because somebody's on their last few days on earth. Is extreme charity the only kind of hospitality that we're called to? Where do we draw the line? If a teen mother, a 16-year-old girl gets pregnant, she's a single mom, and is that somebody that we're willing to show some hospitality to? Maybe because she's really trying, because she had the child, and now she's worthy of our charity. She's shown enough humanity for us to care for her. What about the girl who chose not to have the baby, who could not see a future where she could care for the life of that child in a meaningful, helpful way, and she didn't have that baby? What if she had an abortion? What if she had 3. Could you show hospitality to a girl who had 3 abortions? Or would you say you're not welcome here? The real miracle of Christ is that he was positive dominant. If you look at discuss psychology, there's this really interesting, it's the fly in the soup metaphor. If a fly drops in the soup, the whole bowl of soup is bad. We're not going to eat the soup. The fly in the soup, the contaminant poisons the whole thing. It's not that the good, healthy soup cleanses the fly. It doesn't work that way. We live in a negative dominant universe in our minds. And yet Christ came down and he reaches out and he heals the leper. He heals the sick. He puts his hands in the mud and the mud on the eyes of a man and cures his blindness. He's all about getting his hands dirty and making us clean. And that is the kind of faith that we are called to be that in other people's lives. Do we have enough faith to say that we can reach into these lives with love and mercy and show hospitality and trust that we are going to offer some kind of positive, dominant solution in their lives by showing that kind of love? That is Christianity, and that is not what the church is being today. And we're not all called to be crucified for others, but in little ways throughout the day, are we able to live up to that call? The call is beautiful and it's good. And when we do, it makes us better. There's peace and there's joy in it, in sacrificing for another. So if you haven't heard of the real message, that's it. And if you're in the church and you've been swept up in these ideas that are inhospitable to others, especially people who have not professed to be believers, what right do we have to invade their life? It's genocide otherwise. And we're called to hospitality. Leave the judgment and everything else up to God and trust that he's able to work a plan in other people's lives if they're not where you feel like they should be in their journey yet.